What makes me, me? What is the origin of my personality? I think if I find the answer to this question, I will gain a better understanding of myself and of other people. Let's begin with the general accepted theories regarding personality. There are two dominant theories regarding personality: nature and nurture. In the nature theory, a person is born with their personality, and they aren't able to change it that much. The other theory is nurture. In nurture, a person's environment and experiences shape the majority of who they are. I believe that personalities are the result of a person trying to optimize their desires while avoiding their fears. It's easier to explain what I mean with a picture. Imagine all the potential I was born with as a circle. If I find a way to become more powerful, the circle gets bigger. If I was disempowered, the circle gets smaller. In this context, power can mean natural abilities, skills, money, and connections. Anything that gives you more options gives you more power. This is the first part of my theory on personality, that raw potential limits who you are, and your potential is limited by the power you have. This explains why people who suddenly become wealthy seem to change. Also why people who suffer a permanent disability change. Their potential has grown or shrunk, and so their personality has changed to compensate. Now let's imagine that there is a blue point in the circle. This represents the starting environment I was born in. It is in the middle to represent how children have the most potential. However, my actual potential is limited by fear. We represent fear by smaller circles. Fears are events that I'm afraid will happen, and because of that fear I take actions to avoid them. This restricts my potential. Some of the fears are valid, and some of them are things I should overcome. This presents an interesting possibility. It is possible that there's a person who has no unreasonable fears, but their potential is still limited. Likewise, there could also be someone who has a lot of potential, but is extremely limited in their fears, resulting in these two people having the same amount of potential. A side note is that in the United States, we don't view overcoming a fear as empowering as the same way we view learning a new skill. That is just an interesting thing I've noticed while making this episode. Going back to the circle, let's add a green point. This point represents who I want to become. If it is inside the circle, the most I need is to overcome a fear, and it will eventually happen with enough willpower. If it is just barely outside of the circle, I just need to develop more skills or resources to reach my goal. If the goal is very far outside of my potential, I would need to change it to become a more reasonable goal, or I'm just being delusional. The next step is to connect the starting point with my goal point, and this creates my life plan. The life plan is the way that I feel is most logical to go from who I am to who I want to be. If there is a fear between my starting point and my goals, I must go around it, conquer the fear, or change my goal. Then I'll put a yellow point to represent where I feel I am on the life plan. We can look at the points and think if I can find a better way to get what I want. So to summarize, I think my personality is limited by my potential. My potential is limited by my powers and my fears. I can gain more potential by empowering myself or conquering my fears. If my goal is inside my potential, I just need to use willpower to achieve my dreams. If it's a little outside my potential, then I need to empower myself. If the goal is way beyond my potential, then I'm being delusional. I need to make a more reasonable goal. But how can this explain my personality? Well, it was simple. Growing up, my potential was limited by my ADHD, and I was always tired. Then I had my many fears. My biggest fear was, and probably still is, social rejection. My solution to overcoming these fears was to remove myself from social life to prevent that. This ultimately made my goal of starting a family basically impossible through normal means. Until quite recently, my personality revolved around ways trying to bypass my fears without overcoming them. I think that is a pretty good starting model for describing my personality, although it is lacking the specifics to explain my preferences. The idea is that humans try to optimize our life based on our abilities and restrictions. However, I do think there is more to the story. Do you agree with my ideas about personality? Tell me down below. Like, comment, and subscribe. See you next week.